a guy that straddles the fence better than anybody I know. Greg Murphy is with us. Murph, we're so glad you could spend a few minutes with us from San Diego. First question, Broken Yolk or another breakfast spot? I know you had to dive in out there, right?
Yeah, a different breakfast spot, actually. I know the Broken Yolk very well. It's a great spot, but I walked up into the Gas Lamp District and just sat on the side of the road and had some coffee, and just a perfect little spot. This is a great city for sure.
It sure is Shangri-La, and I tell all Phillies fans, full disclosure, I made the trip out there. I made the trip twice. The first year I stayed on the wrong side of the street. I was closer to the convention center, so I saw Frank Kuppenbarger doing his morning run, as he passed me on that path on the water. And then 2 years ago, he and Andy McPhail were walking back from the Broken Yolk as I was walking to the Broken Yolk. So I tell anybody just to check out, if the Phillies play in San Diego, that's a road trip you want to make at least once in your lifetime for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Pete, for sure.
So the Phillies are 43-72 now, and so much to talk about. And by the way, kudos to you for yeoman's work over the weekend. Alumni Weekend is certainly enjoyable for the fans and the people that come back, but they should give you overtime or double time for all the interviews you get to chase down.
Yeah, you know what? It's such a great weekend, for Phillies fans, for guys like myself who have been a fan since I was a little kid, to get a chance to reconnect with some of those guys that played in the 80s, the 90s, and obviously even guys before that I didn't get a chance to watch play. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I think we had 45 or 50 guys come back for Alumni Weekend, and all of them had a great time. They're out on the golf course right now playing in the Alumni Golf Tournament. So the weekend continues for those guys back in Philadelphia. But, yeah, we enjoyed it. Great to see a lot of the guys, and great to catch up with them.
We're talking with Greg Murphy, Phillies broadcaster and field reporter for the Phillies telecast, and a guy that gets a front row seat to see the good, the bad, and that third category. And we'll start with the good, because I certainly did enjoy the storyline of Rhys Hoskins, and maybe he was pressing a little bit. And yesterday he checks two things off. He gets his first career RBI and his first major league hit. Just your impressions of Rhys Hoskins and what kind of player you think he can be.
Well, I've seen him a couple of times, obviously, over the last 2 years, been in spring training, and then, getting a chance to watch him over the last couple of days. In talking with baseball guys who I really trust, they believe that Rhys Hoskins is going to be a very good Major League ball player. And, that's exciting. It's exciting to think about the power that he brings to the middle of the lineup. It's exciting to think about the defense that he brings, whether it be at first base, and he's pretty comfortable out there in left field as well. He's a terrific young man who's really good in the clubhouse as well. So it was great to see him get that hit. I do think he was pressing a little bit, heading into I guess his fourth game, and still hadn't recorded that first hit. So good to get that out of the way. I'm sure the first home run will come soon enough, maybe even on this road trip, so he could check that off the list as well, and then just get down to playing baseball. We're going to get a chance to see him over the next couple of weeks, and I know Phillies fans are excited about that, and I'm certainly excited about it as well.
And Odubel Herrera extends his hitting streak yesterday to 16 games. And I read off in the 2 o'clock hour of our show out here that Chase Utley had a 16-gamer in 2014, and this is the longest since Philly Raul Ibanez did it. He had an 18-game hitting streak in 2010. So Herrera hitting the baseball, that's not the part that has people going, oh, boy. His base running mistake yesterday, obviously, a little bit of a downer. How does that message get through to Odubel, and what do you think is being said to him in the clubhouse?
Well, the message will get through to Odubel. I know fans are upset about it, and rightly so. I mean, it was a big mistake, obviously, in a very crucial part of that game where the Phils had some momentum and it looked like maybe they could do some damage. But that said, look, I'm a guy, and I've been saying this consistently for a year and a half, 2 years. I'm a guy that believes that you can win with Odubel Herrera, and I think he is a kind of guy that is a part of a championship team. That said, he's 23 years old. He has made his fair share of mistakes this year on the base paths, and that has to change. But we've seen it change with other guys over the years. I'm not going to go back and name some names, but I think back to a guy or two on that 08 team that early in their career made similar mistakes, and they sort of cleaned it up. And you only have to go back as far as last year to see what Cesar Hernandez has done in taking strides. on the base pass and trying to figure things out. Odubel is a special kind of player in a lot of ways. And you know what? He's young and he's emotional and he makes mistakes, and those are going to have to get cleaned up. But I really do believe that he will work on it, and that they will become, further and further between the mistakes.
Hey, Greg, Josh here. I want to stay on Odubel for a minute because we look at the base running error last night, but we forget he's extended his hitting streak. He has 6 home runs in his last 28 games. The fact that he's hitting over 340 since the All-Star break. You mentioned the young player making mistakes. Isn't also some of this spotlight on him a fact that this team hasn't been winning a lot of games, and anything that happens kind of gets even magnified more and more than if this team was winning games, we might dismiss it as, well, he made a mistake.
Yeah, I think there's truth to that, Josh, for sure. The mistakes on a team that has, lost twice as many games as they've won or are on pace to do that are certainly going to be magnified. And, Odubel, again, is one of those guys. He does seem to be a little bit of a lightning rod just because of the way he plays the game with the emotion. And so yeah, I do think that folks are I don't know if picking on is the right word, but are looking at his mistakes and kind of blowing them up a little bit more. If this team's record was flip-flop, all we would be talking about is what an offensive what an offensive player he is and a terrific player with the bat. And, the mistakes would be there and you'd let them go because you'd be winning. So when things start to turn around in that regard as well, I think Odubel's mistakes will be lessened. But, we shouldn't forget that since June 1st, so even well before the All-Star break, the guy's hitting 380. That's pretty darn impressive at any juncture of the season. He improved his batting average about 60 points over that time. So, he's a guy that you like near the top of your lineup for sure.
One guy I don't think is talked about enough is Nick Williams. Everyone was going nuts throughout the whole season. The fan base, we want to see the young players. We want to see young players. Everyone is so hyper-focused on Rhys Hoskins, on J.P. Crawford. But Nick Williams has been hitting really well. He's up here for 36 games. He's got a .293 batting average. He's got 5 home runs. He's driving in runs. I remember last year people were wondering when he was going to come up, and it seems like he was a bit of the forgotten man. And yet he is hitting at a pace that makes you kind of wonder, did the Phillies really handle him very well in letting him sit down their neck last year? And then this year, he's really reaping the benefits for them.
Well, whether or not they brought him up at the right time, that's an argument that could be had for the rest of his career, and no one really knows for sure. He was brought up at the time he was brought up, and you're right, he has been very effective. I think we had a stat on the broadcast, and I might not have these numbers exactly right, but through his first 35 games, I think he had 39 base hits. The only person in the franchise that's ever had more in their first 35 games was Jimmy Rollins, who had 40 hits in his first 35 games. So that's your all-time hits leader in the franchise. So he has been very, very consistent. He's been a guy that has hit for average and for power. He's knocked in runs. He's come up big in big situations. We have a long way to go to know whether or not Nick Williams is going to be able to keep that up for, years and years and years. But he certainly is off to a good start. And I can tell you he is just one of the most pleasant guys to be around as well, which is nice. Always a smile on his face, plays the game very hard, which was something that at one point in the minor leagues, people were knocking him for, that he didn't always run out balls on the ground, didn't always play hard the entire game. He's changed that, and you can tell. So, he got that message when in the minor leagues, and now that he's up here in the big leagues, he's bringing it.
Greg Murphy's with us, the field reporter for Phillies Telecast. You can find him on Twitter at GMurphCSN. News coming out today, Greg, that first-round pick Adam Hazley's been promoted to Lakewood, 6 weeks with the Crosscutters, and boom, he moves up to Lakewood. So that's got to be an encouraging sign, and maybe something we'll see in your notebook or your notes on tonight's telecast if we stay up late enough.
You're going to have to stay up late. I was, as I said, I was sitting at a cafe on the gas lamp, and I saw that he had been promoted. I read the story that he had been promoted. It is great to see. I mean, that's what you want. He's a guy that obviously played at a big time college and has some really good experience under his belt, so maybe he was playing a little bit lower than he should have been anyway. But the fact that he was playing well and succeeded, and the organization saw to it that they move him up to challenge him at that next level, it just reiterates the idea that these guys, these college guys that have been drafted, may very well be on a fast path to the big leagues, and that's certainly what you want with your top round picks.
Let's talk a little pitching, Murph. The one win the Phillies were able to procure against the Mets over the weekend came with arguably their ace on the mound. That's Aaron Nola, and a lot of eyeballs going toward Aaron Nola. But I always read with interest my pal Corey Seidman, because I rely on him as well for good Phillies knowledge, and he writes about the fact that, hey, don't overlook Jared Eichhoff. His ERA dropped from 4.83 to 4.45, and he's 3-0 over his last 7 starts. And of course, in a pitcher's park tonight, Jared Eichhoff could get the job done.
Agreed. And, Aaron Nola has been absolutely terrific this year, and I'm sure you guys have talked about him a lot, and deservedly so. He's been terrific. But I agree. Jared Eichhoff, over the last couple of games, we've started to see that pitcher that we saw last season out of Jared Eichhoff. I remember coming into spring training thinking to myself that Eichhoff, he was a guy that really could take a step forward and kind of solidify himself as a number 2 or a number 3 in a rotation by having a good year. He got off to a good start. The team did not get off to a good start around him, didn't score a lot of runs. He lost some games. And then I think he started to question himself a little bit of lack of confidence. Then the injury happened, and things started to kind of spiral downward for him. Over the last couple of starts, we've seen that Jared Eichhoff that we saw last year. I think he's pitching with a lot of confidence, and thankfully the team's scoring runs behind him now, and that helps, certainly when you're out there on the hill. So I don't think we've seen the best of Jared Eichhoff yet this year. Hopefully he continues to build on that and starts tonight against these Padres. But to me, he's a very intriguing guy that could be a part of this rotation for a long time to come. And, it's good to see that he's starting to figure it out. Even though it's late in the season, it's good to see he's starting to figure it out.
Speaking of starting pitchers that are pretty good, Mark Leiter has actually impressed me in his 3 starts and coming out of the bullpen. Murph, this guy, I never expected him to pitch this well this quickly, especially considering the fact that the Phillies didn't really have him, there wasn't one of the highly touted prospects, but yet is there a possibility he could be contending for a rotation spot in 2018?
I will say this, Josh. There is nothing that Mark Leiter has done to show us that he's not capable of doing anything he puts his mind to be quite frank. He has taken every single challenge that has come his way in the short period of time he's been up in the big leagues. And not only has he taken on those challenges, he's excelled at those challenges. It is really great to see a young guy who doesn't have the most overpowering stuff, who doesn't, wasn't one of the most highly touted prospects, didn't come from a big-time college program. All he does is go out there and give you quality starts or quality outings each and every time he's on the mound. So I would never put anything past Mark Leiter Jr. at this point. And I had a chance to talk with his father yesterday during Alumni Weekend. And, obviously he comes from a baseball family. The pedigree is there. And the knowledge of the game that Mark Leiter Jr. possesses because of his father and his uncle and being around baseball for as long as he has been is certainly helping him as well. So, yeah, it just goes to show you that sometimes prospects, it's an imperfect science, and sometimes guys just will themselves to the big leagues and will themselves to success. And I think Mark Leiter Jr. has been doing that.
Speaking of prospects, we saw this weekend you had a point where in the lineup you had Hoskins, you had Williams, you had Alfaro all in the lineup together. Are we looking at the possibility of this future lineup developing as 2017 concludes?
Absolutely. And honestly, just because Cesar Hernandez has been around for a little while, and just because Freddie Galvis and Odubel Herrera, Odubel's 23 years old. He's younger than Rhys Hoskins. This is the youngest team in baseball now as it's currently constructed, and I do think you're seeing the beginning of what this future Phillies team is going to look like. There is a lot of good, young, talented ball players up here in the big leagues, and a few more still to come. And they're still figuring some things out, as we talked about with Odubel. I think all of them are still feeling their way through the major league season. But I think anyone that's watching these games can see that the future is pretty bright. And, you'll add in some other pieces along the way. I do think that better times for this team are not that far away. I really believe that, and I certainly hope it too, but I really do believe it.
Greg Murphy with us, the field reporter for Phillies Telecast. You can find him on Twitter at GMurphCSN. Again, it's Jared Eichhoff tonight for the Phillies. Travis Wood counters for the Padres. That is a 10:10 start time, but tune in and watch Phillies pregame live, as that's always entertaining to watch as well. And there's Phillies postgame live for usually an hour and a half after the broadcast. Plus, who's on the trip this time, Murph? Who's going to be giving you the needle? Is Crucky on the trip, or is it Ben Davis?
It is Ben Davis, returning to his San Diego roots, although I guess John certainly has San Diego roots as well. So John's had been on the last 10 games, so Ben's on, I believe, the next 10. So we'll have Ben in the booth tonight and Tom McCarthy with the call.
All right, so maybe a little bit less of a needle from Ben than you'd get from Crucky. He seems to, look, it's a lot of fun. He seems to give you the business. Like a Where's Waldo game, never seems to be able to figure out where exactly you are in the stadium until it's time to talk to you. And he says, where is he again? Down there, John. Oh, okay.
One of these days I'm going to videotape John and I when we're behind the scenes, and then all the things that I need to consistently help him with in order to get through the day. John's been an absolute pleasure to have on the broadcast this year. He's a lot of fun to be around, and we've certainly enjoyed it. So I think we got a pretty good group, and Ben Davis obviously is one of my closest friends too. So it's always a lot of fun.
Oh, we enjoyed the heck out of the food night, aka the broadcast from the stands night. I know I did, because they weren't sharing any of the food with you, but then Bull was bringing them shorts, and the food was flying. So there's 3 games in San Diego. That's tonight, tomorrow, and Wednesday, and then 4 in San Francisco. That's really the last big West Coast push, last big road trip for the Phillies before then they go all East Coast NL East teams to wrap up the season. So that light at the end of the tunnel, Murph, you can see it, I'm sure. The end of September is not that far away.
Not too far away. But I'll be honest with you, after a couple of weeks off, I'll start thinking to myself, all right, let's get this going again. Let's turn this thing around, and we'll be back at spring training before we know it. I'm a baseball fan just like you guys, so I miss it when it's gone, for sure.
We'd be remiss if we didn't give you the quick opportunity to talk about what you do every year from the Tour de Shore, and that ends right in our backyard at the Irish Pub in Atlantic City on St. James Place.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, so we just finished the 30th annual Irish Pub Tour de Shore, which leaves from Philadelphia, the Irish Pub in Philadelphia, and ends up, as you said, in Atlantic City at the Irish Pub down there. This year we raised $1.1 million for first responders and their families in our area. All the money stays right here to help those families of the people that are helping us each and every day. So very proud of our accomplishments. We had 2,500 riders do the ride this year. No serious injuries, which is always nice. Beautiful day that ended in Atlantic City. So a lot of good people doing some good work on that day. So, yeah, thank you very much. And if people want to know more about it, they can go to irishpubphilly.com and check it out and see where the money all ends up and the people that we're helping.
He's a 1989 graduate of Holy Cross High School, and I have no idea how he looks so much better than me if we're the same age. That's driving me crazy. He's Greg Murphy from Comcast Sportsnet, the Phillies broadcast, their field reporter, a guy that when I sit in my dad's seats in 114 row 39, I'll look over and say, hey, there's Murph. And about the time I'm about ready to raise my hand, whoop, he's gone. And then comes back up, and I think, oh, there he went. But I see you, Murph. I see you.
Always moving. I'm always moving, Pete.
I love it, pal. Thanks so much for spending time with us. Enjoy San Diego. Let's see the Phillies get 3 out of 3 there and 3 out of 4 in San Francisco. That'll be a great road trip, huh?
That would be just fine. I would love that. 6 post-game interviews, I'm on board. You got it.
Attaboy. All right, Greg Murphy with us. Thanks, bud. We appreciate the time. It's the Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN. Our sincere thanks to Greg Murphy for spending some time with us. He's the field reporter for the Phillies Telecast. You can find him on Twitter at GMurphCSN.